In this short video, I will cover the political cartoons as introduced by Reeve, top-down processing, race and religion as dimensions of identity, and the challenge to society, as it is my greatest takeaway from this course. Let's start with these political cartoons. First, let's look at Mormon Elderberry out with his 6-year-olds who take after their mothers, printed by Life magazine in 1904. This is a great example of how the media portrayed Mormonism at that time. The top hat, the beard, all of the kids of different racial heritage and ethnic backgrounds. This describes how Mormons were pushed away from racial white purity and how polygamy was always portrayed in Mormon political cartoons. Vanity Fair took it another level further and gave Mormons horns and cloven feet and depicted them as only half human. And I quote from Reeve, 2006, half-Greek god Pan, a mythical deity known for his sexual prowess and seductive reed flute, unquote. This is how Mormonism was portrayed in 1860 by Vanity Fair. It's still a huge name in media today, and we can see how harmful these pictures can be and how they just confine an entire religious group to portray them as a different race, an ungodly race, a half-human, not American, pure white race. These types of propaganda are exactly what pushed Mormons to show off their whiteness and coincide more with the racial purity of America and strive to appear white. They wanted to be accepted. As Mormonism began to create buzz, the nation began to critique the religion and situate Mormons along the religious and ultimately racial landscape in America during the turn of the century. Political cartoons are a great example of top-down processing. They take the most distinguishable attributes of a group of people or a person and compile them to create a stereotype or classify them with things or attributes that they already know. So you can see, looking at these political cartoons discussed by Reeve, that Mormons were portrayed a certain way, that they began to take on that stereotype because of how heavily publicized these attributes were.
In my personal response, which is heavily influenced by my background in psychology, although stereotypes can be harmful, quickly gathering sensory information and classifying it within the archive of what we already know, this is an innately human process that has ensured the survival of our species. Psychologists refer to this as top-down processing. However, understanding how automatic this process is and how harmful it can be, it is important to be able to reflect on these snap judgments before making any kind of stereotype. While top-down processing is an efficient evolutionary mechanism, the social landscape today in the United States and the global mindset of today, we've outgrown the confines of top-down processing, especially in any term of religious or racial classification. If we use this topic to kind of summarize Reeve's entire book on race and religion, it kind of shows you how closely intertwined those two concepts are when we create a stereotype or decide for someone else or a group of people what their identity is. Or sometimes when we take on our own identity, we can see in the very last book we read that the Hasidic Jews in Crown Heights oftentimes wanted to appear typically Jewish. They wanted to take on that stereotype and grow out their beards and things like that to appear different, to show their identity. So it was automatically observable, and people could look at them and know they were Jewish. Now, this all goes back to why it can also be harmful. Because if you were to see a black person in Crown Heights, which you likely will, you don't know for sure if they're Jewish, but you might automatically just assume they're black, genteel citizens of Crown Heights. But they may very well be Jewish people, and they deserve to have that identity, whether it's observable or not.
The big point is humans desire belonging. Everyone desires an identity, a concrete identity, in order to better understand themselves in a social landscape and within this nation that's founded on religious freedom or racial integration. It is easy to assume that a religious or racial identity are both crucial dimensions for any group of people. It's how common these two dimensions become dependent upon one another, and makes it hard to interpret or classify anyone based on any top-down process or something that you may have seen in a news article. It's worth reflecting on these automatic assumptions, these flash judgments, when we discuss any type of racial or religious classification.
Reeve does a great job examining the intricacies of race and religion and how quickly these concepts are fused together to describe the identity of a group or the self.